So is Kang the Conqueror going to be Marvel Snap's next broken card? I have certainly heard some people say that, and we're going to talk about it in this video because it's finally time to review this month's upcoming Marvel Snap cards. These are often data mined pretty far in advance, but I like to wait until we get final confirmation in the reveal video that the stats and effects are in fact confirmed and staying the same. So we're going to talk about Kang, we're going to talk about Ghost, we're going to talk about Stature, and we're also going to talk about M.O.D.O.K as well. Even though he's already in players' hands, I want to talk a little about first impressions and give him a review score. So that said, we're going to kick things off with Ghost because it looks like she's going to be the first card hitting this month. And Ghost is a 1/2 with an ongoing effect. Your cards are always revealed last. Their on reveal abilities happen last, and reveal priority is something that's really important in Marvel Snap because of course a lot of decks have reactive cards where you want to be playing an Enchantress or a Shang-Chi, and perhaps you want to be doing that even on the final turn to really surprise your opponent, and you often need to be revealing second in order to hit the right targets or maximize the number of targets possible, because if your opponent is going to drop a big old 30 power Taskmaster on the final turn, you need to make sure your Shang-Chi is revealing after that Taskmaster, making sure that it can remove it. So there are certainly going to be decks that will heavily value Ghost's effect. The more reactive sorts of cards you have, the more likely Ghost is going to be important. And the good news is she's a 1/2, so you're not really making much of a sacrifice in order to put this card into your deck, because you know a lot of decks are running 1/2s anyway that have various effects. Something like an Iceman might be subbed out for a Ghost instead, particularly if it suits the deck really nicely. Now of course there's the other side of that same equation, in that if you're playing that giant Taskmaster, and of course that's just one example of many possible things that might get reacted to, countered, destroyed, silenced, etc. But if you want to ensure the safety of your Taskmaster and you want your opponent's Shang-Chi to reveal before your big threat, then you might run a Ghost as well. And what that means is a lot of people could have Ghosts in their deck, and I'm assuming they just negate each other and it goes back to typical rules for priority, or perhaps it goes to random rules. I'm not really sure how that'll work, but either way, they certainly would negate each other's effect, of course. And that's kind of a neat little idea. Is like, how, or am I the one running the Ghost? Is everybody running the Ghost? If everybody's running the Ghost, is anybody running the Ghost? Does it kind of work its way out of the meta in that regard? Will some super reactive decks just have to have Ghost to make sure all of their answer cards are able to do their thing? I think so. I think a lot of decks will still want to run Ghost for these very reasons. Now, do keep in mind this is an ongoing effect, so, you know, of course you have to hit it. It has to be played. It is technically silenceable. If somebody could Enchantress your Ghost or something to remove this effect. Honestly, is that going to be worth the trouble? I don't know. It seems like if they Enchantress your Ghost, you're pretty happy anyway. So this just feels to me like a really high utility card. A lot of decks are going to care about this effect. The ongoing aspect is actually an additional bonus because that synergizes with other cards as well. Suddenly you throw this in your Spectrum deck and you're really, really happy, right? So I think this card will be a very, very commonly seen card. It's not going to be one of those like awesome build around things that's super meta defining, but it will be very important, very relevant card. I think we're going to see a lot of Ghost personally. All right, so next up here we have Stature, and this card is, I think, a lot more niche than something like Ghost. She is a new 5/7 with an effect that reads costs 1 if your opponent discarded a card from their hand this game. So of course, if a discard meta ever became really prominent and there are a bunch of discard decks running around, you could just throw Stature in your deck and you suddenly have a 1/7, which is really nice. Of course, so getting 7 power for 1 energy is hyper efficient, and this serves as kind of a soft tech card against discard decks. It's not a direct counter or reactionary sort of card. It's just a really nice bonus for you if you happen to run into a discard deck. Now, of course, the other side of Stature is that you can build your own deck to make your opponent discard cards. Currently, there are 2 that do that. We have Moon Knight at 3 energy, where you both discard a card, and Black Bolt at 5 energy that can force your opponent to discard their lowest cost card. So basically, in either of those instances, Stature becomes that nice bonus 1/7 on top of those cards. Now, Moon Knight is something that already shows up a little bit in discard decks since it has that symmetrical effect. It can be beneficial for you to discard stuff, and certainly can wreak havoc on your opponent's hand if you discard something really important from them. So, you know, is Moon Knight enough to toss a Stature into your deck? It might be, just for that occasional mirror match upside, and when you hit the Moon Knight, it becomes a really powerful play. It might sit dead in hand on occasion, but there will be other instances where it feels really, really nice. Are you gonna make a Black Bolt Moon Knight discard deck like all in one? I don't know that Black Bolt adds enough to make Stature worth it, or I guess does Stature add enough to make Black Bolt worth it is the better way to frame that. Currently, Black Bolt's not a card that gets played a ton. I maintain he's okay. You have a chance to mess up your opponent's final turn. He's got 8 power, which isn't terrible for a 5 energy card. So maybe if you can line up a good turn 5 with Black Bolt into a Stature turn 6 of some sort, that could be really interesting. Maybe a Moon Girl earlier, you get multiple Statures in hand, and then you have this big pop-off turn. That's a possibility. I'm not convinced that that will be consistent enough with only 2 cards to really empower the Stature line that becomes its own sort of deck. We might need 1 or 2 additional cards in the future that discard stuff from your opponent's hand. Then that's going to be a really toxic deck if that happens, where your opponent just doesn't have any cards. So, you know, I do think Stature's going to live in a little bit of an awkward middle ground, at least for a while, it feels like to me. I'm not sure either of those directions is reliable enough for this to take up a spot in your deck. Maybe Moon Knight hits often enough that it is worth it. In that case, a 1/7 is a great bonus. We'll see. I'm not hopeless on Stature at all. I just think decks will have more direct and prioritized game plans, and having only a 2-card activator for this one might not be enough. But if discard becomes really popular, then suddenly Stature feels like a freebie. So, you know, if Zabu and Silver Surfer get nerfed as they've been promised to be, and M.O.D.O.K starts taking over the ranked meta, then Stature could come in and offer a counterbalance for a lot of decks. It's like, yeah, man, I'll play a Stature. That's a nice bonus to handle all these discard decks. So soft tech card, kind of interesting. Self-activating deck where you force your opponent to discard, a little less interesting to me, but still a promising card. I like soft techs like this. It's cool. All right, so next up, let's talk about our buddy Kang the Conqueror. I've seen so much debate over this card already. He is a 5/0 with an on-reveal effect. Look at what your opponent did, then restart the turn without Kang. So let's talk about the functionality of this first. And there's an interview where Ben Brode, Marvel Snap's director, talked about how this works. So we do know exactly how this works now. There's been speculation about it working different ways. So let's pretend it's turn 6 and you play down the Kang the Conqueror. And let's say your opponent plays a Magneto and they play it in the left location, right? So what's going to happen is you're going to see that Magneto come down. You're going to see the Kang come down, assuming his on reveal activates. There's no Cosmo or anything. And you're going to say, okay, they have a Magneto. Cool. We know what they have. The Magneto is going to get pulled back to hand. He does not stay on board. He restarts as well. The opponent also gets to restart their turn. Kang vanishes, right? So now you have this informational advantage. They have a Magneto. They want to play it in the left location. Now, sometimes that's going to be a very obvious advantage for you where it's like, oh, Magneto's only good left. There's no reason to play Magneto mid or right. If I can answer this Magneto left, I'm going to win the game because that's their only good option. And maybe that's literally their only card in hand. So there will be moments where Kang offers a virtually 100% win rate, informational advantage, where you know exactly what they have and exactly how the game is going to unfold. Now, of course, there will be a lot of other instances where Kang does not offer that. Suddenly, it's like, oh man, they could play the Magneto right. What happens if they change their plan? Are they going to change their plan? Are they going to stay the same to surprise me? It becomes the Princess Bride dilemma. You know, I know that you know that I know that you know sort of thing, going back and forth. Or also, of course, they might have other cards in hand. Maybe they're not going to play the Magneto. Maybe they play the other 2 cards in hand and surprise me in a different direction. So it's really going to come down to, like, in practice, how often is Kang offering this really decisive informational advantage that just allows you to win the game? And even if he doesn't offer that decisive advantage, if it's not 100% clarity on what's going to happen, is he still free enough to run that it's worth it anyway, just to see that your opponent has a Magneto, or to see that they hit the Silver Surfer or their big finisher combo piece? Oh, they do have the Hela in hand. Sometimes that's going to offer you even like retreat information, like, oh, I can't beat the Hela, I just got to get out of here, I'm going to lose the game. They did hit their piece, they hit their combo. So I think in both cases he offers a lot of upside, a ton of information. Now, the cost of running him is free, basically, right? You're not wasting 5 energy because the turn is restarting. You're going to get to play the turn again. So the only cost to Kang is as a card advantage resource cost. There is opportunity cost, effectively, to having him in hand and having played him, because he could have been a different card instead. Now, for most decks, that's really not too much of a problem because you often have multiple cards left over in hands anyway. You have a lot of choices in a given game. So throwing away one additional card in hand is really not that big of a cost because you have so many extras regardless and so many different ways to spend your energy. So in those cases, if that deck allows that, he's probably just a freebie. You toss him in, you get some information, you lengthen the game a little bit, and you probably make a lot better plays on the back of Kang the Conqueror. I think most of the time, as long as you're smart with Kang and understand how he's going to work well, then he's going to be worth it. And do note that you can play this going into turn 6. This is not like a magic effect where you have to play it on 5. I think you'd often be wasted playing it on turn 5. You might as well play it on turn 6 to get as much information as you can. I'm sure there are some specific scenarios where he's good earlier, but probably want to play him on 6 to understand exactly how the game is going to unfold on its final turn. So that's why Kang is a lot different than something like Daredevil, right? Daredevil, number one, they know that the Daredevil is there. They know that they're giving you the Daredevil information, and they can make some plays around that. They're going to be surprised by the Kang. They don't know that the Kang is coming. They're probably going to show you the Silver Surfer. They're going to show you the Magneto where they want it to go. So they're not able to play around it and manipulate that informational advantage as much as they might with something like a Daredevil. That's why Kang is 5 energy, but also he's just totally free to play. I don't mean free to play from a monetary sense, of course. He's incredibly expensive to play as a Series 5 card, but free to play within the context of a given Marvel Snap game. So what does that mean for Kang? I think this card's going to get played a lot. I think Kang is going to be a freebie for so many different decks. There might be some that can't do it because they care about like hand size, and losing that card in hand might not be worth the raw power. Or maybe they just don't have enough like decision points or reactionary cards or counters where Kang offers some sort of informational upside. Like, okay, I got the information, but what do I do with it? My deck's just so self-directed anyway that I'm not going to change my plays regardless. I'm putting power here, I'm putting power here. I know that's where I want it. Kang's irrelevant. So they may just care more about card choice and that resource advantage in hand, having better choices. That opportunity cost may not be worth it for them. But I do think there will be lots of decks that run Kang. I think he's going to be a freebie to just gain insight, surprise the opponent, make their life awkward. Because here's the thing, right? If they really wanted to play that Magneto left, suddenly they may have to play it somewhere else for a less optimal turn. Like, you may be forcing their hand, directing them into more awkward plays, bad plays, etc. So I think Kang will be worth it. Do I think he's like totally broken? I don't know if I'd go that far. I think he's really strong though, and I think a lot of decks will love to see Kang. I think he's going to create some really fun moments as well. There might even be some crazy metas where people skip turns thinking that the Kang is going to hit. They're like, oh, I don't want to show my Magneto or my Silver Surfer because they're going to play Kang this turn. I know they're a Kang deck. So you just skip your turn, and then maybe the opponent didn't play Kang, and they were like, no, actually, they think I'm going to play Kang. They're going to skip their turn. I'm not going to play Kang, and I'm just going to win. So all kinds of crazy mind games with this card. Really, really interesting from a design standpoint, but excited to give this one a shot, and I think it will be very strong. So next up, let's talk about M.O.D.O.K. This guy came out in the season pass yesterday. He has been played in a variety of different archetypes so far. I'd say there's kind of 3 or 4 different ways to play M.O.D.O.K. right now. There's like Lockjaw stuff. There's like big Apocalypse Dracula Chavez stuff, which kind of crosses over with Lockjaw often. There's like big Hela stuff. I've even seen combo-y stuff with like Collector and Morbius and Wongs and Swarms. So a handful of different ways to slice it when it comes to building a deck for M.O.D.O.K. I do not think all of those are going to end up being high tier decks. I think probably one will end up being a pretty good deck we see consistently on the ladder. Time will tell. We need more time to shake that out. But M.O.D.O.K's such an interesting card because his effect is so big. You know, normally we see discards discarding 1 or 2 things at max. This is everything. And that is going to be something that enables power spikes. It enables big synergies and big plays, which is what we like to see for cards to be powerful. It is very narrow in that it's only going to have discard payoffs, it looks like. But so, you know, maybe not quite as universally powerful as something like a Zabu or a Silver Surfer, where it feels like those can be played in a variety of different ways for super high power spikes. This is more about that enabling aspect. But that's why I think it'll have one good, really strong deck and maybe not quite as pervasive as the other season pass cards we've seen so far. Those Silver Surfer and Zabu have both been incredibly meta-defining top tier cards. M.O.D.O.K feels a little level below that. You know, he's going to make you one good deck perhaps, and I don't think he's going to do much more than that. But I will say a card like this is always intriguing because this effect is so big. It's so universal. It's your entire hand, right? It has that potential that in the future, anytime a big discard synergy pops up, you got to keep an eye on M.O.D.O.K. He might be able to break things later on. Not to mention he has a really nice base power here at 8 power. That's really quite competitive for a 5 cost card. So you're not sacrificing anything for the size of this effect. Of course, it's a downside in normal play, but a huge upside when you build your deck for it. And that always creates opportunity. There may be moments in the future where having that full universal discard becomes even better than it already is, as future cards get printed that might support it. So, you know, a card that's, I think, already looking pretty solid. I think there will be a good deck. Not amazing, solid, but in the future has even more potential, perhaps. I would certainly keep an eye on M.O.D.O.K. There's going to be something that pops up in a year where we're like, oh my God, this is insane for M.O.D.O.K. M.O.D.O.K is going to make this absolutely busted. And I think that's a cool place for a card to live. Good, solid, and occasionally really, really spicy. So that's how M.O.D.O.K stands to me. So all that said, I wanted to do some star ratings for cards. It's fun to give cards ratings. As I mentioned in my last card review video, which I know now has been a month ago, so I'll recap it. I'm going to rate these from 1 to 4 stars, a 4-star scale. Now, of course, that said, by God, don't listen to streamers. I'm going to give this reminder every time. We are silly. We don't know yet. These are speculative guesses. Number one, you should never listen to one person anyway. Gather lots of information. Certainly don't make buying decisions based on a review like this. Wait for data, wait for experiences, wait till these cards come out. Of course, don't snap grab a card for 6,000 tokens because I said it was going to be 4 stars. That would be an enormous mistake. Ghost is a 3-star card. Stature is a 2-star card. Kang is a 4-star card. M.O.D.O.K is a 3-star card. So there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this particular card review. Some pretty exciting cards this month. I think, in particular, some strategic cards, a little bit more nuanced and calculating as opposed to just like really basic effects. So Kang and Ghost in particular, I think we're going to add some layers of strategy to the game for sure. It's going to be exciting to see how that unfolds. But that said, curious to hear what you guys think about these cards. Is Kang going to be nuts or garbage? Is Ghost going to be absolutely everywhere or work herself out of the meta? I'm very curious what you think these cards are going to do. That's it. Thanks for watching. And until next time, game on.